But as a basic template, really basic and more conservative, for thinking of a training cycle, could encourage someone to think about their quote unquote preseason or their base training phase as 3 to 4 months. That's a really good time frame. If you're building from scratch, that is, like if you've never run or you've not run for a long time and so you're completely deconditioned, I think 12 to 16 weeks is necessary to safely rebuild that base conditioning. And it's mostly just running, simple, easy, low heart rate running, maybe with a little speed thrown in towards the end. But it's just building up that work foundation. And that preseason, I think, can be one of the most critical times to think about form, sharpen form, and then, incorporate weight training. And weight training can have all sorts of iterations or even be partnered with things like yoga, other physical activities that are fun. But the key being race specificity again, like we think about the course running, when it comes to weight training, it actually doesn't have to be that fancy. You don't even really need a gym. It can begin, and a lot can be gained by just body weight based resistance training. Integrating that into the race season can be seamless. Maybe towards the end, the final month, 2 weeks, some of that's going to need to be considering race goals, and maybe that has to taper a little bit, but they can be fully integrated. You don't want to do a really hard interval workout running wise and then go right from there to do a heavy leg workout in the weight training center. That's going to overload it. So breaking those up, mixing them in where they're complementing each other, but also not compounding is going to be really important. With a good foundation set, and again, there's a lot of range, and not everybody has this much time. As a coach, I worked with people with much shorter range. We just have to be realistic and try to maximize time. And again, a lot is based on their current fitness and their history. But I have found personally, with good base training, 18 to 20 weeks is an excellent amount of time. It allows flexibility where if something happens, any setbacks, I'm not stressed because it's going to completely derail my training. I have room for adaptation, adjustment. It also allows time to get up to what I would say peak mileage, which can be 1 or 2 weeks right before the taper, of roughly maybe 55, 65 miles. There's again a range there. There's people that have gone and run a marathon with less mileage than that, but I think the ideal potentially to be ready in that distance to feel the most comfortable in a sense, getting up more towards that, because then also you want a key long run in preparation during the peak mileage phase is getting up to at least running about a 20-mile run. That's a pretty standard distance in most plans. It has that 6 mile margin from the race day, but 20 miles seems to generally be enough for people to feel mentally and physically ready. I ideally love to do that a couple weeks, even building up a bit more, but it's so much based on experience and goals. But the key is that the body needs to have worked enough to have a sense of what it's going to be demanded of if you want to run the whole thing without walking or suffering as much through it. Other key components in the race season are eventually, with long runs especially, practicing your fueling strategy. You don't want to be experimenting on race day with new gels or foods or anything like that. You want to have it completely locked in based on experimenting during runs. If something doesn't go well on a training run, the consequences are not quite as grave as if it happened on race day. So locking that in, whether you want to use gels, chews, when you have water, how much you're doing, all that is ideally locked in. Also, a thing that's commonly overlooked as hugely advantageous, especially if pain is starting to erupt and or you feel like you may be at the edge, or particularly for, I think, older runners, cross-training. The bike is an excellent tool, whether it's a stationary or a real bike. It doesn't quite get the same aerobic benefits as running, but the muscular and general physiological benefits are really strong. I've worked with a lot of athletes, young ones even, to great effect, that have had to use a lot of biking because they're on the edge of potential injury. They just have nagging things. And so biking takes the stress off because it's non-impact based while still giving them work to do and a lot of strength development. So when they are able to go from that to running, it's a pretty seamless transition. Or even a swimming pool can be excellent with especially the aerobic side, or aqua jogging, all these things. And there's other types of activities that can help mix up the training or be a benefit along the way as you're building